Hello, you're watching Chaos TV. I'm Gemma. Today we're at Newquay Zoo, which has been very busy over the past few months. They've had 3 new arrivals, the red panda, the baby tapir and an Austin civet. We're going to catch up with John Meek, who's the curator here at the zoo. We're joined by John Meek, who is the curator here at Newquay Zoo, and we're lucky enough to be in the red panda enclosure. John, exciting news. What happened recently?
Yes, absolutely. We've got our second ever baby panda here at the zoo, and just before we started this, she just stuck her head out of the nest box, so it's really nice to see her. She's just about fully grown now, so it's not quite as baby as she was, but fantastic to have her.
How old is she?
She's about 3 months old now. So we've been waiting really for her to come out of the nest box, and she's being a little bit bone idle, so not coming out as much as we'd like, but we think she's probably coming out more at night. They're quite nocturnal animals.
And have you named her?
Yeah, she's called Emma, after one of the keepers actually. So yeah, so the keepers come up with all sorts of strange names, but that's quite a nice one.
What's the gestation period then for a red panda?
It's about 3 months, three and a half months, something like that. It's not very long for such a large animal, but we kind of knew when she was coming into season. The behaviour changes, and the males chasing the females around a little bit more, and she's become receptive. So we had a good idea approximately when she was going to give birth, and they actually built a nest in the nest box. So as soon as she started doing that, we thought, yeah, we're on the go here. So we're really pleased to get her.
Now, if she's the second Red Panda Cub you've had here at Newquay Zoo, was it anything to do with the quiet time during the pandemic?
No, actually, she came in last year. This is our female, and she came in last year from France. And as she came in, she was just at the edge of her season, so we didn't quite get her pregnant last year. So this year she was with the male just about the right time. I don't think it had an awful lot to do with it. I think we'd have had a baby anyway.
Now the dad is sitting right at the top of that tree.
Yeah.
What's their behaviour like? Do they get up to much?
Well, actually, these guys this is one of the nicest pair of pandas we've ever had. This female came in, and she's the nicest animal we've ever brought in. She's just beautiful. She's not tame, but she's perfectly comfortable and happy with the keepers and with people being around. He's a little bit more standoffish. We're waiting to see what the baby's going to be like. I don't know what the character is going to be like yet, but the female is she's just gorgeous. She just, as you can see, sits there quite happily in front of people.
What's the general rule when it comes to zookeeping and interaction with your animals? You don't want them to become too reliant on you. What's the rule? No, I mean, there aren't specific rules. The keepers are very experienced, and they know how to behave around them. There's obviously certain risk assessments with certain animals because of the danger, they could potentially cause. But these guys are, generally speaking, we can go in with them. The keepers know the behaviour. They'll know when they can hand feed them and when they have to stand off if they're being protective over the youngsters or they're in season. So that's something that becomes experience. But with certain animals, it is a small carnivore. It looks like a lovely cuddly bear, but you really wouldn't cuddle it because they've got very large teeth, and so they have to be very careful. We have to be cautious. Do you know what's going on in southwest China and the Himalayas where they're native to?
Well, these are reducing in numbers at the moment, as most things are, and it's due to a great extent with climate change. It can also be with deforestation, and also with, as you can see, it's such a beautiful animal that the pelts have actually become quite sought after, so they are hunted as well. So it's a species that we're working with the European breeding programme to ensure we've got a good genetic population, and these two come in specifically for the genetics to make sure that we're breeding the correct animals to produce the young female we've got here. So it's quite a scientific thing we do to make sure that these animals are kept for the future.
And how likely is there to be another baby?
Oh, I think pretty likely. They're very fond of each other, so come next year we're hoping so. So this female will go off to another zoo at some point, and as soon as she's ready, and then hopefully we'll have more youngsters. And they can have up to about 3 or 4, so we may have more than one at this time.
John, tell us about the latest addition to the civet family.
Well, we've got a youngster that we bred this year, which is fantastic because we bred one for the first time in 4 years last year. So to actually have a second one this year. Last year Mum didn't do well with it, but this year she's done amazingly well and she's reared it all by herself. So it's a really, really important animal. These animals are incredibly rare in the wild. It's one of our major breeding programs and conservation programs that we do here at the zoo. We've actually been to Vietnam and we work very, very closely with them with this particular species in the wild, and we're one of the only zoos in the world that keeps them and breeds them. So they're incredibly precious animals, and as you can see, stunningly beautiful. So it's a really precious baby. We've just got Dad back with the group now, as you've probably seen. So we've actually got all three of them as a family group back together. So fantastic.
How many are in captivity?
There's about a dozen in Europe, and there are 7 or 8 in Vietnam. As far as we know, that's about all. And how many there are in the wild is debatable, but very, very few. It's an animal that's actually trapped incidentally in the wild. If they catch them, they eat them, or they take them to coffee farms and things and use them for pushing coffee beans through to create this odd coffee that they create.
The coffee is, it's called Kopi Luwak, isn't it? The animals are captured and fed cherries, I believe. Do you know much more about it?
Well, not a lot, because I think it's just not something I want to try or even be involved with. But they do actually cage them in tiny cages, and that's all they feed them. And then they eat the cherries, and then the seeds go all the way through, and then the coffee beans, and then they actually roast the coffee beans and say this is a huge delicacy. Like, who came up with this idea? I have no idea, but basically what you're eating is civet poo. So anybody who wants to try it, if you want to eat or drink poo, then good luck to you. But I mean, these animals are suffering dreadfully because of it, and it's just not necessary at all.
Now, the civet that was born here last year was the first one here at Newquay Zoo in 4 years, yeah. And the mum's milk dried up. How is Mum doing this time? Amazingly well. Actually, last year she lost a lot of weight during pregnancy. They seem to lose a lot of weight, and it seems to take quite a bit out of them. So she actually suffered a little bit and didn't quite make it last year. But this one she's reared beautifully, and we've left her with it, and we're not messing about with it, and Dad's gone back in, so it's a nice little family group. But certainly they get it wrong sometimes, and we help them out, but generally speaking we just leave them to it. They are quite a peaceful animal, but we noticed you brought some food out and they came straight out. What did you give them to eat? They just had little pieces of meat. So it's actually adapted as a worm eater. So these animals actually live on giant worms in Vietnam in the ground. So it's a completely unique species. It's somewhere between a carnivore and an insectivore. So we're not sure whether it's developing from one direction or the other. But they will eat fruit as well, but lots of insects, lots of worms, lots of pieces of meat. And that's one of their favourite things, so we just gave them a little bit of meat. It's all part of the diet. The weight is critical on these things. So when we came down today, the meat that was brought down would have been fed in an hour's time. So the keepers won't let me give them any extras or treats because it's really critical what we do. So what do they do all day besides hide from you? Well, during the day, not very much because they're nocturnal. So actually these animals, we have 2 groups of them here. We have one in our nocturnal house, so people can see them actively moving around, and they walk at night, almost like water. You can hardly see them. It's fantastic. And this is our breeding pair, and that's the noise from our breeding pair. So these guys are in a diurnal exhibit, so they tend to go out more at night. But so they just laze about during the day if they possibly can. But like any animal, they're actually opportunistic. So if you put food down during the day, they're not going to turn it down. They're going to come out. You're watching Chaos TV. We are at Newquay Zoo today at the tapir enclosure. I'm joined by John Meek, the curator at the zoo. John, what's the latest addition in this area? Well, yeah, we have a young male tapir, as you can see, the little stripy fella in the middle of the 2. He's there with mum and sister. And he's a very welcome little chap, but he was slightly unexpected. We didn't expect a baby tapir this year, but we are thrilled. So mum was supposed to be taking contraception and didn't quite work, as often happens. So, you know, nevertheless we're very thrilled, and it's great to have him. He's chilling out this beautiful hot sunny weather in October here. He's just lying under the trees there, so they seem to be quite chilled. He's very cute and stripy. How long before his stripes fade? Well, it can be up to a year. They start to fade away. When you get to about 8 or 9 months, they start to disappear, but up to a year they've still got stripes on the legs and things. These three are clearly very relaxed and enjoying the sunshine. Is that their general temperament?
Oh, these are incredibly relaxed animals, generally speaking. You always have to be very careful. It's a wild animal and they can spook, but generally speaking, tapirs are the greatest things. You can go down there and scrub them on the belly and they'll roll over like dogs. They're fantastic things. So they're very, very chilled out. And these animals are all bred in captivity. They've been here at the zoo for many years, and so therefore, yeah, they're just having a lovely afternoon.
What's unique about them?
Well, it's a browsing animal. It's actually from South America. This is a Brazilian tapir. There are 4 species of tapirs. And it's a browsing animal. So if you actually look at the nose on them, you can just about see down there. It's got almost like a slightly prehensile nose, going towards an elephant type thing, but it doesn't use it like that. It can actually browse on tree branches and leaves and things like that. So it's almost the equivalent of a black rhino from Africa, which is a browsing animal. So they actually wander through the jungles, actually eating leaves and pulling leaves down from trees and fruits and things like that as well. So I mean, they're an absolutely fantastic creature. They live in dense rainforest, and they love the mud. The good thing about tapirs is they love the mud, and they can wander around even then when it gets wet here in Cornwall, which it often does.
What do you think would suddenly change their behaviour and make them pick up and run?
Well, you'd have to spook them quite a lot. In the wild, it's obviously a much spookier animal. I mean, they live in jaguar country, so anything that looks like a jaguar is going to spook them. But we try not to do that. And loud noises, anything like that can happen. But generally speaking, you've got to work pretty hard to spook a tapir.
Now, in the Amazon, they're hunted by humans for their meat. Are they an endangered species?
They're not a critically endangered species like some, but certainly the way the Amazon rainforest is going and the Pantanal, which is burning in huge areas now, and that's really affecting this species. The deforestation and the burning of the Pantanal is affecting this species massively. So that's something that, even if they're not critically endangered now, they're not going to be far away from this. There's really habitat loss over there is becoming a critical issue.
So what's their general life expectancy then?
Well, these guys can go up to about 20 years old, something like that, a little bit older, some of them. So they're lying around like that, they'll live forever because they don't do very much if they've got a choice about it. But yeah, 25 years old. Like
and how does Newquay Zoo help tapirs?
Well, this is part of a European breeding programme. So this is part of what we call an EEP. So all across Europe, there's dating agencies for animals. So all the animals you've seen are all on what we call a stud book. So therefore, the stud book holder, the person who runs that stud book, will actually dictate to us, this animal has to go to this zoo and breed with that animal. So genetically, we get the correct animals. So what we've got a large group of these animals within Europe. There's a different group in North America and different parts of the world. So there are captive animals. If we do become to the point where there's no animals left in the wild, there is a genetically pure pool of animals outside, and we could easily ship these things back to forest ranges and stuff over there if necessary. Right now they're okay, but the way things are going, we have to be forward thinking and making sure that we're keeping species that are currently okay.
And we've had a really lovely time, so thank you very much for bringing us to Newquay Zoo today. Just a final question, do you have a favourite animal here?
Oh, everybody asks me that, and it depends on the day, it depends on what we're doing. Everybody knows I love my black wildebeest. Black wildebeest are unique and strange and odd, and I adore them, and it's a unique species that we keep here at the zoo. But it can be anything from sloths to the ouse and civets and some of the birds and stuff on a different day. When things are happening and we if we get babies or anything, that becomes your favourite for the day. So generally speaking, not really, but if we're going to go in with a baby tapir like that, there's not much to beat it really.